The first hunt. The darkness of space stretched endlessly as the Zorvac scout ship drifted toward Colony X-17. The planet below was supposed to be a thriving hunting ground for the galaxy's deadliest species, the Zorvacs. But something was wrong. A distress signal had been sent from the colony 3 days ago. Something is killing us. It is eating us. That was the last message before complete silence. General Crexon, a veteran warrior of the Zorvacs, stood at the front of the ship's command deck. His sharp black eyes scanned the planet's surface as the ship descended. Crexon was built for war. His armored scales, towering physique, and razor-sharp claws had made him a legend among his kind. He had hunted creatures across 100 planets. Nothing had ever hunted him. As the ship touched down, the silence was deafening. No welcoming party, no guards, no life. The colony, once a thriving city of Zorvac warriors, was now an abandoned ghost town. "Prepare for search and rescue," Crexon commanded. His squad of 10 elite Zorvac warriors moved out, their plasma rifles raised. The air smelled of blood and decay, the signs of a nightmare. Crexon walked through the empty streets. The buildings stood tall, but something was off. The doors were broken, claw marks stretched across the walls, and deep gouges in the steel roads told of a brutal fight. Then they found the first body. A Zorvac soldier lay sprawled on the ground, his chest torn open. Chunks of flesh were missing, bite marks covering his body. Crexon narrowed his eyes. Bite marks. Who would dare eat a Zorvac? Who could have done this? One of his warriors muttered. Crexon knelt beside the corpse. The wounds were fresh. He looked around. The silence felt wrong. Suddenly, the radio crackled. "Sir, you need to see this." Crexon rushed forward. His warriors stood frozen outside a building. He followed their gaze and felt his blood run cold. Inside, half-eaten Zorvac bodies were piled together like prey. The smell of death was overwhelming. One of the warriors pointed to the corner. A security recorder still blinked with power. Crexon activated it. The screen flickered. Then they saw it. A nightmare. The hunters become the hunted. The footage showed a group of humanoids, their bodies covered in armor, their faces hidden under dark helmets. Humans. But these weren't ordinary humans. They moved with precision, like seasoned predators. They didn't fire weapons from afar. No, they were up close, using blades and strength to rip through Zorvac warriors. One of the Zorvac defenders charged at them in the video, but a human dodged, too fast, too smooth, and sank his blade deep into the Zorvac's throat. The warriors watched in horror as the humans did the unthinkable. They tore into the fallen Zorvacs and ate them. A warrior beside Crexon stumbled back. "This is madness. Humans. Eating us." The footage ended, but the final seconds played over and over in Crexon's mind. A lone human, covered in Zorvac blood, stood over a dying warrior. The Zorvac coughed out a last breath, whispering, "What are you?" The human grinned. His voice was calm. "Predator. No. Prey." The screen turned black. Nowhere to run. Crexon turned to his team. "We are not alone. They are here." As if on cue, a noise echoed through the silent colony. A footstep. Then another. Then laughter. The warriors spun around, raising their rifles. The streetlights flickered, casting long shadows. In the distance, movement, figures stepping out of the darkness. Humans. Not running, not hiding, walking straight toward them. "Hold your fire," Crexon ordered. "We need tow." A blur. A scream. A warrior was gone. Crexon barely turned in time to see it. A human dropping from above, blade flashing. Another Zorvac fell, throat slashed. They were hunting them. Panic surged through the squad. "Fall back," Crexon shouted. "To the ship." The Zorvacs sprinted through the streets, but the humans were faster. Shadows darted across rooftops. More laughter. A whistle. Crexon knew that sound. A hunting call. We're prey. Blaster fire erupted. The Zorvacs fought. But for every human they shot, two more appeared. The darkness itself seemed to be against them. A warrior screamed as he was dragged into an alley. Another was tackled, his weapon skidding across the ground. Crexon turned, raising his plasma rifle. A blade pressed against his throat. A human stood before him, eyes gleaming behind the dark visor. "You understand now," the human whispered. Crexon did understand. The Zorvacs were no longer the galaxy's apex predators. They were the hunted. And the humans, they were hunters. The hunt begins. The silence was worse than the screams. Crexon knelt beside the corpse of one of his warriors. His throat was slit cleanly, expertly. The wound was surgical. Whoever had done this wasn't killing for survival, but for sport. The colony of X-17 was gone. The streets were littered with Zorvac bodies, torn apart like prey. The once great hunters of the galaxy had become nothing more than meat. Something is out there. Something is hunting us. A whisper crackled through his comms. "General, they're watching us." Crexon turned sharply, scanning the rooftops, the alleys, the broken windows of the surrounding buildings. Nothing moved, and yet, he felt it. The eyes. They were being watched, studied. "Form up," Crexon growled, voice sharp and controlled. His remaining warriors, 5 now, only 5, tightened their grip on their weapons. They were the best of the Zorvacs. And yet, for the first time in their lives, they felt afraid. "Move towards the ship. We leave now." Then the streetlights flickered. A soft sound, like metal scraping against stone. Then another. Then a laugh. Not robotic, not alien. A human laugh. The sound of a predator. The Zorvacs froze. Their species never laughed while hunting. They roared, they howled, but laughter, that was something weaker species did. But humans weren't weak. Click, click, click. The sound echoed through the colony. Metal boots against steel. Deliberate. Slow. Crexon's heart pounded as a figure stepped out of the darkness. It wasn't a monster. It wasn't a beast. It was a man. Dressed in dark armor, his visor reflecting the dim light, he walked forward with no fear. One hand rested lazily on a blade at his hip. The other gripped a sleek, black rifle. He was alone. One human. Crexon raised his rifle. Fire. The Zorvacs fired as one. Blue plasma bolts ripped through the air, but the human was gone. A shadow. A blur. He moved too fast. One of the Zorvac warriors screamed as a blade pierced through his chest. The human twisted the weapon before yanking it free, letting the body drop. The others stepped back. Their prey had just killed one of them in the open and didn't even run. The human smiled. He was enjoying this. The hunt is on. Crexon snarled, raising his claws. "You dare." Something slammed into him from behind. Another human. Where had he come from? Crexon rolled, just in time to dodge the downward strike of a blade. His attacker was already gone, fading into the shadows. The humans weren't fighting like soldiers. They were fighting like predators. Another Zorvac went down, tackled into an alley, his screams cut short. Then another. Only 2 warriors remained. "Run," Crexon ordered, his voice raw. "To the ship." They sprinted through the wreckage of their fallen city. More figures appeared, more humans. Not charging, walking, following. Not chasing their prey, but herding them. Crexon knew this tactic. It was how Zorvacs hunted. But now it was happening to them. A warrior beside him tripped, a wire hidden in the rubble. Crexon turned in horror as a human dropped from above, blade flashing. One clean stroke. The last of Crexon's warriors fell. Crexon was alone. Nowhere to hide. Breathing heavily, he stopped, back pressed against a ruined wall. He gripped his weapon tightly. "Show yourselves." Silence. Then, a whisper. You already know where we are. A figure stepped into the moonlight. Not a monster. Not an alien. A human. You Zorvax always thought you were at the top, the man said, tilting his head. But you never met a real hunter, did you? Crexon felt something he had never known before. Pure, raw fear. He aimed his rifle, but the human was already moving. A blur. A strike. Crexon collapsed, clutching his wound. The human hadn't killed him. Not yet. You're different, the human mused, standing over him. You understand now, don't you? Crexon coughed, trying to keep himself upright. What are you? The human kneeled, placing a blood-stained knife against Crexon's throat. The new apex predator. Crexon closed his eyes. For the first time in his life, he knew. The hunt was over, and the Zorvax had lost. Human evolution. The perfect apex predator. The Zorvax had ruled for centuries. They were born to hunt, to conquer, to dominate. Their kind had never known true fear, because no creature had ever been strong enough to challenge them. Until now. General Crexon sat in the dark, his body battered, his pride shattered. He could still feel the blade at his throat, still hear the human's words. You understand now, don't you? He did. The Zorvax were no longer the galaxy's apex predators. They were being hunted. And the most terrifying part, the humans weren't just killing them, they were enjoying it. The unnatural evolution. Crexon's wounds burned, but not as much as his mind. He needed to understand what made these humans different. Zorvac intelligence networks had long dismissed humanity as a weak species. Their homeworld, Earth, was a primitive place of mountains, oceans, and forests. Nothing special. But something had changed. Somewhere, somehow, humans had evolved beyond natural limits. And now, they were unstoppable. The Zorvac High Command had ignored the early warnings. They believed humans were just another prey species, soft, slow, fragile. But Crexon had seen the truth. They weren't weak. They were relentless. They didn't run from war. They thrived in it. They didn't just adapt. They'd mastered survival. And now, they had turned the hunt against the hunters. The darkest secret of humanity. The Zorvac archives held records of countless species. Crexon had studied them all, learning the strengths and weaknesses of every known predator in the galaxy. But humans, they were different. Their evolution didn't make sense. Their planet had been home to terrifying beasts, giant monsters, and deadly environments. Yet humans had wiped them all out. They had no claws, no fangs, no natural armor. And yet, they had become the deadliest species on Earth. Why? Because they had something far worse than claws or fangs. They had intelligence. They had patience. And above all, they had hunger. The nightmare begins. For the first time, Crexon accessed the classified Zorvac files on human warfare. What he found made his blood turn cold. Humans had been killing each other for thousands of years. No other species in the galaxy fought like them. Most intelligent races eventually found peace. They developed weapons but used them only when necessary. Humans, they never stopped fighting. Their history was endless wars, brutal conflicts, and relentless survival. They had fought in deserts, jungles, ice, and space. They had used blades, guns, explosives, and machines that could wipe out entire cities. But the most terrifying part, they got better at it. Every battle made them stronger. Every war forced them to evolve. They were not just survivors. They were warriors, bred by war itself. The birth of super hunters. At some point, humans stopped waiting for evolution to change them. They took control. Crexon scanned the files. Genetic modifications, cybernetic implants, augmented reflexes. They had transformed themselves into something else. Something terrifying. The humans that had attacked Colony X-17. They weren't soldiers. They were hunters. Not just any hunters, Elite warriors, bred and trained to take down the strongest beings in the universe. They weren't just hunting Zorvacs. They were playing with them. The final lesson. A whisper echoed in Crexon's mind. You understand now, don't you? He did. The humans had spent millennia perfecting the art of the hunt. And now, the galaxy belonged to them. Crexon clenched his fists. He had to warn the others. But deep down, he knew. It was already too late. The escape, or the trap. Crexon had seen wars. He had fought in the bloodiest battles across the galaxy, watched entire civilizations crumble beneath the might of the Zorvacs. But never before had he felt like this. Never before had he felt like prey. The colony of X-17 was gone. The streets were filled with silence and blood, the only survivors himself and a handful of warriors. His enemies, not an army, not a fleet, just a few humans. And they had wiped out an entire Zorvac colony. Now, they were hunting the last survivors. And Crexon knew one thing for certain. They weren't letting them leave. A desperate retreat. Crexon's heart pounded as he sprinted down the ruined streets. His warriors followed, their heavy footfalls thundering behind him. 5 remained. That was all. 5 out of hundreds. The Zorvac warship was docked outside the city, hidden beneath a canyon ridge. If they could reach it, they could escape. They had to escape. The ship's communications had been jammed the moment they arrived. No signals could go in or out. Crexon had been a fool. He should have seen it earlier. This was never a rescue mission. This was a trap. And he had walked right into it. The sound of death. Footsteps. Not behind them. Not above. Everywhere. Soft. Controlled. Measured. Crexon didn't slow down, but he knew what was happening. The humans weren't chasing them. They were hurting them. Faster. Crexon roared. We reach the ship, or we die. They ran. The city's broken skyline loomed around them, once a mighty fortress, now a graveyard. Bodies lay in the streets, torn apart, gnawed on. Some were missing limbs. Others were missing entire chunks of flesh, as if something had been eating them. Crexon forced himself to look away. He had seen brutality before, but this was different. Zorvacs killed for war. They killed to conquer. The humans killed for something else. For pleasure. A shadow flickered in the alley to their left. Crexon's instincts screamed. Left side. Fire. Blue plasma streaked through the air. Nothing. The shadows swallowed the shots, leaving only silence. Then, laughter. A low, eerie chuckle. From behind them. Then another. And another. The Zorvacs turned, their weapons raised. No one was there. More laughter. From the rooftops. From the alleys. From the darkness itself. They were surrounded. Trapped. And the humans were playing with them. Crexon's breathing was sharp and heavy. They weren't warriors anymore. They were prey, and their predators were toying with them before the kill. One of the warriors, Ruthless, turned in a panic. We can't fight this. We need tow. A blur. A shadow. A human dropped from above, landing silently behind Ruthless. No sound. No warning. Just a blade across the throat. Ruthless gurgled, eyes wide, claws scratching at the wound. He fell, twitched, then went still. The human grinned. You run well, the figure said, his voice smooth, almost amused. But not well enough. Then he vanished back into the darkness. The final stand. Run, Crexon bellowed. They sprinted through the city, not bothering to shoot. It wouldn't matter. The humans weren't in front of them. They were around them, above them, beneath them. They reached the city's outer gates. The canyon was just ahead. Their ship, their only chance of survival, was hidden beyond it. Crexon felt a flicker of hope. If they could just reach the ship. Then the world exploded. A deafening boom split the air as the ground beneath them shattered. Crexon was thrown back, landing hard against a crumbling wall. His vision blurred. Dust and fire rained down around him. A mine. The humans had set a trap. Crexon groaned, pushing himself up. 3 of his warriors were gone. Just 2 remained. Their escape route was blocked, the canyon now a wall of flame and rubble. The laughter returned. Closer. Louder. Footsteps approached through the dust. Shadows flickered in the firelight. Crexon's blood turned cold as the humans stepped into view. Not running. Not hiding. Walking. Calm. Confident. Like they had already won. Crexon raised his weapon. The last 2 warriors did the same. This was it. They were going to die. But they would die fighting. Come then. Crexon snarled, baring his fangs. Face me. The lead human tilted his head. His armor was black, his face hidden behind a visor. His voice was calm. Too calm. You still don't get it, do you? He said, stepping closer. Crexon tensed, claws tightening around his weapon. The human raised his hand. Slowly. Deliberately. Then he dropped something onto the ground. A small, bloodied object. Crexon's eyes widened. It was a Zorvak skull. You were never escaping, the human said. Crexon's breath caught in his throat. This wasn't an ambush. This wasn't a battle. This was a hunt. And he had already lost. The last stronghold. The galaxy had never seen the Zorvaks retreat. They were the apex predators, the supreme hunters, the masters of war. For centuries, they had crushed civilizations, wiped out species, and ruled with an iron claw. But now they were running. From humans. The war no one saw coming. When General Crexon's warship limped back to the Zorvak homeworld, he was barely breathing. His body was broken, his spirit shattered. His entire battalion had been slaughtered. The Zorvak High Council had demanded answers. He had given them the truth, and they had laughed. You tell us the humans, primitive, weak, unevolved humans, defeated our greatest warriors. Counselor Drazel scoffed. That they hunted you like prey. They didn't just hunt us, Crexon growled, his voice filled with a rage he couldn't control. They enjoyed it. The laughter died. Enjoyed it. Not just war. Not just battle. The hunt. That was the difference. That was what made humans different. They didn't just fight to conquer. They fought to become better killers. And now, they had set their sights on the Zorvaks. But the council refused to believe. They thought they were still at the top of the food chain. By the time they realized the truth, it was too late. The galaxy burns. The first reports arrived within days. Entire colonies were going dark. Not conquered. Erased. No distress signals. No survivors. Just silence. Then came the footage. The security feeds showed it all. Humans, moving like shadows, cutting through Zorvak armies like they were nothing. They didn't use massive fleets or overwhelming firepower. They didn't need to. They used stealth, precision, fear. One moment, a base was fully operational. The next, every single Zorvak was dead. But that wasn't the worst part. The bodies were missing. The horror of the hunt. It took a while before the truth became clear. The humans weren't just killing Zorvaks. They were taking them. For what? For food. The High Council watched in silent horror as one recovered video file played on the screen. It showed a human camp. Bodies of Zorvak warriors hanging from hooks. Their flesh being cooked over open flames. Humans, laughing, drinking, eating. Feasting on the strongest warriors in the galaxy. For the first time in recorded history, the Zorvaks knew fear. This wasn't a war. This wasn't about politics, or power, or land. This was something older, something more primal. A hunt. And the humans, they weren't just winning. They were having fun. The fall of the Empire. Panic spread through the Zorvak dominion. Planets that had once been filled with proud warriors were now graveyards. The humans moved like ghosts. They didn't come in massive waves. They came in packs. Small groups of hunters, each one taking down entire battalions. They would attack a Zorvek outpost, kill everyone, and disappear before reinforcements arrived. Every time a planet tried to resist, the humans simply waited. Waited for them to starve. Waited for them to run. And when the Zorveks finally broke, the humans were already inside the walls. Waiting. The Council's last decision. The High Council gathered in secret. The Zorvak Dominion was crumbling. They had only one stronghold left, Kovara Prime, their homeworld. If it fell, their species would be extinct. They had two choices. Surrender, try to reason with the humans, beg for mercy, fight to the death. There was no debate. The Zorvaks had never begged before, and they wouldn't start now. The final stand. Kovara Prime became a fortress. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon was gathered for the final battle. It didn't matter. The humans didn't attack with fleets. They didn't surround the planet. They didn't negotiate. They just waited. For weeks, Krexen stood on the walls of the Zorvik capital, watching the skies. He knew what they were doing. They were starving them. Zorvaks were predators. They thrived on the hunt, but when there was no prey, when they were the ones being hunted, they became weak. The humans knew that. They had studied them. And when the Zorvaks finally broke, when they started turning on each other, that's when the humans struck. The end of an empire. Kovara Prime fell in a single night. No war, no battle, just silence. The humans moved through the capital like shadows, taking out the leaders one by one. By the time the sun rose, the Zorvak Dominion was gone. Their warriors were dead. Their people were missing. And the humans, they had left one survivor. The final message. Krexen sat in the ruins of his once great empire. His hands trembled as he activated the last remaining distress beacon. A holographic message played across the galaxy. His voice was hollow, broken, defeated. This is General Krexen of the Zorvak Dominion. To all remaining forces, do not fight them. Do not resist. There is no victory. There is no escape. We thought we were the apex predators. We were wrong. The humans, they are worse than anything we've ever known. They don't just kill. They hunt. And now, they are hungry for more. The message ended. But by then, there was no one left to hear it. The final battle, or the beginning of the end. The Zorvaks had ruled the stars. For centuries, they had been the undisputed apex predators, unstoppable warriors who conquered, hunted, and devoured weaker species without mercy. Now, they were nothing more than prey. Their empire had crumbled. Once mighty cities stood abandoned, their streets littered with bones. Their warships, built for planetary destruction, now drifted lifeless through the void, silent tombs of dead warriors. And the worst part, the humans didn't conquer them. They erased them, one by one, world by world, until only one stronghold remained. Kovara Prime, the last bastion. The Zorvak homeworld, their final stand. And tonight, it would fall. The silence before the storm. Krexen stood on the balcony of the high citadel, looking out over the city of Kovara. It had once been a place of power and pride, the heart of their empire. Now, it was a graveyard waiting to be filled. Fires burned in the distance. The streets were filled with terrified survivors, warriors who once believed they were invincible, now whispering among themselves. Not about victory, not about survival, but about the humans. They spoke of the nightmarish creatures that had hunted them to extinction, the shadows that struck without warning, the whispers in the darkness before an entire battalion vanished. The council had ordered them to hold the city. Krexen knew better. They were already dead. The humans just hadn't killed them yet. The last defenders. A deep horn echoed through the city. The alarm. The attack had begun. Crexon turned to his warriors, his voice hard. "Hold the walls. No one retreats." They nodded, but he saw it in their eyes. They knew. They weren't defending Kovara. They were delaying the inevitable. The hunters arrive. For hours, nothing happened. No warships in the sky. No mass invasion. Just silence. Then, as the second moon rose, the air changed. Crexon felt it. The weight of unseen eyes. The warriors tensed, weapons ready, hearts pounding. And then, the shadows moved. One by one, warriors started disappearing. Not screaming. Just gone. A patrol of 10 entered a side alley. Only silence came back. A sniper positioned on the tower blinked, and suddenly, he wasn't there anymore. Panic spread through the ranks. "They're inside." Someone roared. "They're already inside." The gates hadn't fallen. The walls weren't breached. But the humans, they were everywhere. The nightmare unfolds. Crexon stood atop the central tower, watching in horror as his warriors broke. Zorvek soldiers, some of the fiercest fighters in the galaxy, were running. They weren't fighting back. They were fleeing. And the humans, they were laughing. Not loud, not wild. Soft, cold, deadly, like predators playing with their food. Crexon turned, claws gripping his blade. "Face me," he roared into the darkness. "Come out and fight." Silence. Then, a whisper, right behind him. "I was hoping you'd say that." The duel that never was. Crexon spun, slashing with all his strength, but his blade met empty air. A blur of movement. A shadow flickering past him. Then, pain. His knee buckled. A sharp, burning sensation in his leg. Not fatal. A wound meant to slow him down. The human stepped forward. His armor was black as the void. His face hidden beneath a helmet with a single glowing red eye. He didn't rush. Didn't charge. He took his time. Like a hunter circling a wounded animal. "You Zorvaks always thought you were the perfect killers," the human said, his voice calm, almost disappointed. "But you never learned the one rule of being a predator." Crexon growled, forcing himself up, gripping his blade with both hands. "And what rule is that?" The human tilted his head. "There's always something stronger." Crexon lunged. A desperate, last attack. The human moved faster than his eyes could follow. A sharp crack of impact. Crexon's blade was gone. His arm, broken. He fell to his knees, defeated. The human stood over him, not even out of breath. "Tell me something, General," the human said. Crexon gritted his teeth. "What?" The human crouched, bringing his masked face inches from Crexon's own. "How does it feel?" Crexon's breath hitched. "How does what feel?" The human chuckled. "Cold, cruel, final. To know you were never the apex predator." Crexon closed his eyes. For the first time in his life, he understood. The Zorvaks were not the hunters anymore. They never had been. And now, they never would be again. The beginning of the end. The next morning, Kovara Prime was silent. The mighty Zorvek Empire, once feared across the stars, was gone. The humans didn't raise a flag. They didn't declare victory. Because this wasn't a conquest. It was a hunt. And the hunters, they were still hungry. Somewhere in the shadows, another voice whispered. Another predator grinned. And the next hunt had already begun. The new apex predator. The stars above Kovara Prime burned silently, indifferent to the slaughter below. There were no triumphant banners raised, no victory speeches, because this wasn't a war. It was a hunt. And the Zorvaks, they were extinct. The last survivor, General Crexon, knelt in the ruins of his empire. His armor was shattered, his body broken. His warriors, Gone. His homeworld. Dead. The mighty streets of Kofara, once filled with warriors, were now empty. The great towers, once symbols of dominance, stood silent. The air smelled of ash and blood. And the humans, they were still here, watching, waiting. Because the hunt wasn't over. Not yet. A soft crunch of boots on debris made Crexon lift his head. The human stepped forward. The same one who had hunted him through the city. The same one who had cut down his warriors one by one. The same one who had spared him. His armor was still black as the void. His visor still glowed with that eerie crimson light. And his voice, calm, unshaken, cold. "You're the last one." Crexon didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. The human knelt in front of him, tilting his head. "You fought well, General. Better than the others." A cruel smile, but not well enough. The message to the galaxy. The Zorvax had once sent a message across the stars. It was a declaration of dominance. A warning that they were the strongest species in existence. Now, Crexon's final act would be sending another message. One of defeat. The human placed a small device in Crexon's trembling hands. A simple recorder. "You know what to do," the human said. "Tell them." Crexon swallowed hard. His claws gripped the recorder like it was his last anchor to reality. He took a slow, shaky breath and pressed the button. The message played across every screen, every frequency in the known galaxy. A warning, a funeral song for his species. "This is General Crexon of the Zorvac Dominion. To all remaining forces, do not fight them. Do not resist. There is no victory. There is no escape. We thought we were the apex predators. We were wrong. The humans, they are worse than anything we've ever known. They don't just kill. They hunt. And now, they are hungry for more." Crexon's voice cracked on the last word. The transmission ended. The galaxy had been warned. But Crexon knew it didn't matter. It was already too late. The hunt never ends. The human warrior took back the recorder and stood. Crexon clenched his teeth. "What now?" The human gave a soft chuckle. "You already know." Crexon shuddered. He did. He was the last Zorvac, the last of his kind. And the humans, they never left prey alive. The human moved faster than Crexon could react. A flash of steel, a whisper of breath, a clean final strike. Crexon collapsed, his vision fading, his last thought not of regret, but of understanding. The humans had won, not because they were stronger, not because they had better weapons, but because they were something else entirely. Something the galaxy was never ready for, something that would never stop, something that had no equal. The true apex predator. And now, they were looking for their next hunt. The galaxy watches in fear. The Zorvax had ruled with terror. But now, the galaxy whispered a new name in fear. Not the Zorvax, not the warlords of old, but humans. The predators who didn't just conquer, didn't just destroy, didn't just consume. They hunted, and no one knew who would be next. But one thing was certain. The hunt had just begun.